Welcome, everyone. Today, our team, Prima, Antonio, and I, Otai, as team lead, will guide you through our presentation on ethical issues in facial recognition technologies. Facial recognition is a type of artificial intelligence that identifies and verifies individuals by analyzing the unique geometry of their face, such as the distance between the eyes, the contour of the cheekbones, and the shape of the jawline. It captures these features, converts them into digital data, and matches them against stored profiles to make decisions in seconds. This technology is being adopted faster than it's being regulated. From airports to smartphones, it is everywhere. But many deployments lack ethical oversight. That's where serious consequences arise, like wrongful arrest or surveillance without consent. Setting ethical standards now is critical to building systems that serve everyone fairly. Before we dive into the deeper issues, there are 5 key ethical areas of concern regarding the use of facial recognition: fairness, accountability, transparency, privacy, and equity. These concerns aren't just technical. They impact real people, real lives, and our society as a whole. This technology is changing how we verify identity and maintain security, but it also brings serious ethical challenges. From misidentification to surveillance without consent, we need to ensure these systems are built and used with care, responsibility, and oversight. Fairness in facial recognition means the system performs equally well for everyone, regardless of race, gender, or age. When algorithms are trained on limited or biased data, certain groups may be misidentified more frequently. This can lead to serious consequences, like wrongful arrests or discrimination in access to services. Fairness helps prevent those harms by using diverse data sets and continuously testing systems for accuracy. Ensuring fairness isn't just technical, it's about protecting rights and maintaining public trust in how this technology is used. A study by the National Institute of Standards and Technology revealed that leading facial recognition technologies have error rates up to 100 times higher for Black and Asian faces than for white faces. These disparities raise serious concerns about the racial bias, misidentification, and the potential for wrongful arrest in the use of AI surveillance systems. We just explored the fairness issues, how bias in facial recognition disproportionately impacts marginalized groups. But the real-world consequences don't stop at unfair data. What happens when the bias goes unchecked? What happens when no one is held responsible? Let's look at a powerful, painful example that shows exactly why accountability matters. In 2020, Robert Williams was wrongfully arrested in Detroit after facial recognition systems falsely matched him to a suspect. No human verified the results. The system's known bias against Black faces was ignored. This case highlights a lack of accountability. No audits, no oversight, no safeguards. To fix this, we must require human review, mandate regular audits, and report system errors publicly. To prevent future harm, facial recognition systems should be paused when bias is found and only redeployed after independent recertification. Accountability ensures these tools protect people, not punish them.
Thank you, Ms. Tai. This is Prima. I'm going to talk about transparency, privacy, and equity. Facial recognition technology has raised significant ethical and technical challenges, particularly in 3 key areas: transparency, privacy, and equity. These issues directly impact how AI is used, how data is handled, and how fair technology truly is. One of the biggest concerns with facial recognition is the lack of transparency. Many AI models operate as black boxes, meaning the public has little insights into how they make decisions. Governments and corporations often deploy these systems without disclosing how they work, what data they use, or how accurate they are. This lack of transparency makes it difficult to hold these systems accountable when errors occur, especially in high-stakes areas like law enforcement and security. We can rebuild trust and ensure accountability in high-stakes applications by implementing explainable AI and requiring public disclosure on how, when facial recognition is used. When it comes to privacy, it's also critical. Facial recognition relies on permanent biometric data, which cannot be changed like a password. Imagine posting a selfie online and finding out later that it was used to train facial recognition algorithm without your knowledge. Many companies collect and store face prints without user consent, raising concerns about unauthorized surveillance and data security. Facial data is biometric, permanent, and deeply personal. If this data is breached, individuals cannot reset their facial identity. Cases like Clearview AI, where billions of images were scraped from social media without consent, highlight the urgent need for stricter data privacy laws and regulations. That's why privacy regulations and consent-based data collection are critical to prevent misuse and protect our identities in the digital age. Finally, we must address equity in facial recognition. AI bias in facial recognition has been well documented, with higher error rates for women and people of color. However, this should be seen as a technical challenge rather than an inherent ethical flaw in technology. The main issue is unbalanced data sets, where AI models are trained on limited demographic data. By expanding data sets, refining algorithms, and implementing regulatory oversight, we can improve the accuracy and fairness of these systems. Instead of rejecting facial recognition due to bias, the focus should be on solving these challenges through better AI design and governance. Ultimately, transparency, privacy, and equity must be addressed to ensure facial recognition technology is used responsibly. Without transparency, we cannot assess fairness. Without privacy, individuals lose control over their biometric data. And without equity, AI risks reinforcing societal biases rather than solving them. The key is not to eliminate the facial recognition, but to improve and regulate it for ethical and fair use. Now I'm over to Antonio on the impacts.
Next, I'm going to talk about the unintended stakeholders of facial recognition technology. Let's start by recognizing that many of the people impacted by facial recognition technologies never chose to be part of the system. Marginalized communities often face disproportionate surveillance, and civil society organizations might be monitored even when acting legally. Non-consenting individuals just walking through a store or a public space can be identified and recorded. Even employees and consumers, along with governments and regulators, often have little say in how technology is used. These are the unintended stakeholders. In terms of impacts of FRTs, facial recognition can bring real benefits like improved security and greater efficiency. It can help solve crimes or speed up the identity checks, but it also comes with risks, privacy concerns, algorithmic bias, and the possibility of misuse. In extreme cases, it can threaten personal freedoms and make people feel watched, judged, or even silenced. So, who will be affected by facial recognition technologies? Everyone. Even if you never interact with a facial recognition system directly, it still reshapes your environment. You may be filmed in public, tracked at a store, or identified by a system you didn't consent to. This technology affects not just individuals, but the norms we live by. Next, I would like to talk to you about the ethical harms of this technology. And these harms happen on 3 different levels. At a personal level, there is a loss of privacy and consent. At the collective level, FRTs may change how people behave in public, potentially limiting freedom of expression. And at the philosophical level, it challenges the very idea of anonymity, the idea that you can simply exist in public without being watched. In terms of implications, if we look to history's major technologies like the internet or automobiles, they fundamentally reshaped our lives. FRTs have the same potential. In the past, rulers didn't have surveillance tools, but now facial recognition give those in power the ability to track citizens continuously. Public anonymity is vanishing, but on the flip side, society might become more efficient and safer. Crimes that once went unsolved could now be tracked in real time. The challenge is finding the balance on how do we gain the benefits without losing our rights.
Thank you, Antonio. Now let's dive into our individual perspectives of facial recognition. We know that this technology is spreading faster than regulation, creating real-world harms from bias and surveillance. So ethical oversight across fairness, accountability, transparency, privacy, and equity is critical. My ethical view is grounded in my core values: efficiency, structure, and leadership. I believe in building systems that operate with clarity and accountability. While I agree with Prima that the current black box nature of facial recognition technology lacks necessary transparency, I go further. Transparency without enforcement is ineffective. We need structured audits, public accountability, and clearly defined oversight protocols to make any visibility meaningful. I also align with Antonio's concern about unintended stakeholders, especially in marginalized groups, but contrasts slightly in solution. Where he centers moral philosophy and redress after harm, I emphasize preventative structural design, ensuring adaptability through proactive oversight and built-in fail-safes. This contrast exists because I believe prevention is more powerful than repair. Ethical systems must be designed to stop harm before it begins.
Now I'm going to talk about my individual perspective on facial recognition technology. This technology presents both opportunities and challenges. While concerns around bias, privacy, and accountability are valid, these are solvable technical issues rather than inherent ethical flaws. Algorithms are only as good as the data they are trained on. By using diverse datasets, conducting regular audits, and refining models, we can significantly reduce bias and improve accuracy across all demographics. Ms. Toy emphasized how fairness in facial recognition is essential to prevent harm, particularly for marginalized communities. She highlighted the troubling disparities in accuracy and the importance of using diverse datasets to ensure equitable outcomes. Antonio further expanded on the broader societal impacts, pointing out how unintended stakeholders, like civil rights organizations and communities, bear the burden of systematic bias. He also raised concerns about transparency and accountability, which can lead to ethical harm. While I agree that these challenges are significant, I believe the solution lies in regulations and responsible deployment, not rejection. Striking a balance between technological advancement and ethical responsibility is key. Governments and companies must collaborate to establish transparent guidelines that ensures fairness, privacy protection, and human oversight. When managed ethically, facial recognition can enhance security, streamline processes, and provide valuable societal benefits. By choosing regulations over elimination, we can ensure that this technology serves everyone equitably. Now over to Antonio.
Next, I'd like to talk about my perspectives on the use of facial recognition technologies. In forming my ethical stance on facial recognition technologies, I believe it's essential to begin with a philosophical grounding. Ethical principles are not absolute, they're shaped by perspective. What one society sees as fair or right, another might not. And that said, there are some shared values that we can agree on, and I think these are categorically imperative to have society work. And one of those is, in my view, that any decision we make about using this technology must aim at the good of society as a whole. Now, on the topic of privacy and equity, which Ty focused on, I think that individuals deserve to know when this technology is being used. Transparency is a minimum requirement. And when we talk about equity, we can't ignore the biases that exist in data algorithms. These systems are trained to work on imperfect data, and if we don't address that, we risk harming people, especially those who are already disadvantaged. At the same time, I do believe that ethical exceptions are justified in areas like national security. Not everything can be equal when the lives or the state's stability are on the line. Finally, when it comes to fairness and accountability, which Prima brought up, I think fairness must be rooted in the dignity of the individual. We can't talk about justice without putting people first. But that only works if somebody is accountable. Governments and companies must be responsible for outcomes. And here's the critical point. If governments don't have control over this technology, accountability becomes nearly impossible. Whoever controls the tech controls the power, and that's where the ethical conversation must be grounded.
Thank you, Prima and Antonio, for your thoughtful perspectives. Now that we've explored facial recognition from legal systems to social impact, let's ground this conversation in what truly matters: ethics. In our rush to adopt facial recognition, we've ignored the very principles that make technology worth trusting. We've seen how bias, secrecy, and unchecked power have caused wrongful arrests, violated privacy, and inflicted invisible harm, especially on marginalized communities. This isn't just technical failure, it's a moral crisis. So where do we go from here? First, we must stop deploying flawed systems that haven't been tested across diverse populations. Second, transparency alone isn't enough. We need independent audits and accountability. Third, no machine should have the final say in life-altering decisions. Humans must stay in control. Fourth, we must amplify the voices of those most impacted, not silence. And finally, ethical standards must be embedded into the architectures of the technology itself, not tacked on later. Because trust in technology doesn't start with innovation, it starts with responsibility.